I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At a House Oversight Committee hearing on Wednesday, Congresswoman Cori Bush spoke about gun violence in America. The Missouri Democrats spoke out against the hardening of schools, saying that could create an emotional toll for the students. Listen in to her remarks for more.
The gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Bush, is now recognized.
St. Louis, and I thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for convening this hearing. In St. Louis, we know the devastation and the trauma of daily gun violence in our community. It's the drumbeat of violence where 6 people were killed and 14 shot within one weekend, and in one part of our community where the population is only a little over 300,000, and it's not considered an anomaly. It's the daily occurrence of trauma and heartbreak in a community reeling from a nation who's unwilling to act but can. So many people in our community have been directly harmed by gun violence, and everybody in our community has been traumatized in some way. Since the massacre of 19 students and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, we have heard a lot of stories, a lot of theories about how best to protect students and how best to protect teachers. At best, these suggestions are absurd distractions, and at worst, they will further harm the very communities in need of our help the most. Communities like mine, communities like Buffalo and Uvalde, Black communities, Latino communities, AAPI communities, our schools, our churches. The list goes on, and we need to address the incidence of gun violence in this country, not with carceral interventionist solutions, but with a public health approach that's rooted in prevention. Mr. Jackson, briefly, what specific strategies has your organization employed to address the gun violence crisis in communities of color? Just briefly.
Really briefly, victim services and support for families, hospital-based violence intervention and prevention strategies, cognitive behavioral therapy programs like Ready Chicago, Advanced Peace, that work with those who are most at risk, creating safe passage for youth as they're coming home. And that's actually a short list of some of the evidence-based models that we know can save lives. And we're fighting for that. You know, cities all over the country are investing their resources. We know that community leaders all over the country, thousands of these organizations are fighting to save lives, but yet we're stuck with scraps when it comes to federal resources.
Evidence-based models that save lives. We need to pass out the pamphlet on what you're doing. I am a survivor of gun violence. I've sat with parents who lost their children to gun violence. I've heard from students who sat next to me and talked to me about how they lost friends and they lost classmates, and they don't cry, they don't even feel anything anymore, all due to gun violence. Our children want action, but the strategies that I get to hear too often from my fellow colleagues and some on this committee will call for the hardening of schools and for placing armed staff and police officers in academic environments. And it tears me down, because I think about as a child when we had fire drills and tornado drills, and they taught us, you know, crouch down and cover your head. And I remember we would have these routine drills, and I really believed that a tornado was going to come, because they made us do this. I believed that a fire drill was coming. It can happen because our school is making us do this, and now they have these active shooter drills. What are we doing? I think about my nephew. I think about my son's safety at school. It's always on my mind as this unrelenting concern about not only their physical safety, but also the emotional toll that they endure through this run, hide, fight reality every single day. So, President Pringle, how has the daily reality of militarized schools and active shooter drills affected our students in these times of extreme gun violence?
We have seen evidence of increased trauma-related illnesses, physical illnesses, as well as our students reporting to us that they are afraid to come to school, that they don't want to go to a grocery store because the violence is in their communities too. We have heard from our teachers that they are leaving our profession because they don't believe that they can protect our students. But they're not stopping. We see our students rising up, don't we? They're demanding that this country protect them and pass gun laws that are common sense, where most Americans agree we should be passing. That's what our students are demanding. That's what our teachers are demanding, and that's what we'll continue to fight for.
Thank you. You know, 81% of those convicted on gun possession charges in my community in the Eastern District of Missouri are Black. And it tears me up when we talk about saving lives. How do we talk about saving lives, but we arm people to be able to take lives, and we arm them easily, and we arm them from the standpoint of it's my right? What about life? Mr. Jackson, in our efforts to save lives and prevent further harm, why is it important for lawmakers to consider the impact of gun control laws and how they affect Black and brown communities?
The gentlelady's time has expired. You may answer the question briefly, Mr. Jackson.
Because this is life or death for us. You know, this is now the #1 cause of death for Black men and the #2 cause of death for Black women and Latino men. And while this may be a political topic for Congress, this is life or death for our communities. You know, I've been nearly shot 5 times, despite going to church, like the member said before, despite saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school. Gun violence surrounds us every single day, and we're dropping like flies. And we don't need more carceral strategies. What we need are real investments in our communities, real investments in prevention strategies that we know work, and we need someone to stand up against the flood of firearms that are pouring into our communities. Guns don't grow on trees. We are not creating these guns. They are being flooded into our communities, and the gun industry is profiting off of our death every single day.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from